Circus saw the show, they couldn't stop it. It was undeniably something wonderful, jazz. It was a very big thing, and they wanted them to tour more, but most of the performers wanted to come back to Harlem.
Okay, okay.
And when he came back to Harlem, right in the middle of the Harlem Renaissance, and it was like Harper. He was the centerpiece. And when Connie's Inn opened up on 7th Avenue,
yes,
he was the first producer, the biggest producer. That was his main place. Then he went over to the Lafayette Theater, the Nest Club, where Mae West's boyfriend owned it, who happened to be black. And
now stop for a second. A lot of this we did not know. So I want to make sure that the audience is keeping abreast of what's happening. This is not only just entertainment, it is historical. So Grant, go right ahead.
Okay, and from that, actually, there was a young guy around his age that needed an apartment. So a lot of the musicians told my grandfather, there's a guy, he's very kind of talented, plays the piano, he's looking for a place to stay, can you let him have a room? My grandfather said, yeah, it was Duke Ellington. Duke Ellington moved in my grandfather's apartment, a block away from the Hotel Teresa, and eventually my grandfather got him a couple of jobs. They went and worked at the Hollywood Inn on Times Square, which was Lucky Luciano's place, his main hangout. And Duke Ellington moved his family and his son in. And when they wanted to open up the Cotton Club, it was called the Club Deluxe. Jack Johnson owned it first.
Yes.
The gangsters moved him out. My grandfather was the first producer there. Clarence Robinson and them worked for him. And he had the Hollywood Inn, the Kentucky Club Review with Duke Ellington uptown. And basically he was doing about 8 shows at a time. Plus, whatever he did at Connie's Inn, after 1 week, he would change the shows there, move it to the Lafayette Theater. From the Lafayette Theater, the shows would move all around the country. They were called tab shows, tabloid shows. So he had about 20 shows going on at the same time.
Marvelous.
And what happened was on vaudeville on Broadway, it was getting tired. People were tired of the shows for a while. He brought in colored talent, which was a novelty, and his main thing was the chorus line. He had those girls dancing and popping and kicking. They danced so well that Bojangles and them had a contest at the Lafayette Theater, and they outbeat him out on his dance numbers.
Right.
He would say, now you all go, and all the girls would do it step for step.
Yes.
And he had never seen anything like that because a lot of people tried to copy his steps and his movements. So he was known for his chorus line, and eventually he gave him a name, and they were called the Harper Reids.
I love it. Go ahead,
So
Allie.
right after that was he went to Broadway and took his show from Connie's Inn to Broadway, put Louis Armstrong in the show, and it was called Connie's Hot Chocolates. And within that show you got Black and Blue and Ain't Misbehavin', which he really didn't get any credit for. And the Depression came in.
Yeah, this is around the 29s and
Right,
30s.
right, the 29s and 30s.
Yes.
Depression came in, so a lot of that Harlem nightlife and the Broadway nightlife, the nightclub thing, went downhill. So what he did was, he got called by Al Capone, and he moved to Chicago and ran his club in Chicago, which was similar to the Cotton Club in Harlem. And he ran that for a while and made a big thing out of that too. And then he came back because Frank Schiffman, who owned the Lafayette Theater.
Right, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, Frank Schiffman, who owned the Lafayette Theater, bought the Apollo. And he called up my grandfather and says, please come back to New York. I got a new place, the Apollo Theater. Can you help us, out? Ralph Cooper, and then we're working there. And my grandfather put his stamp on the Apollo Theater. He had a big grand night with Lillian Armstrong. And put Duke Ellington in, and
now we say Lillian, that was Louis Armstrong's wife.
I think it was his wife or his sister.
Okay.
I know that one of his wives.
Was that Louise, or maybe it was, I'm sorry, but anyway, it was related to him.
Well, his wife, the wife that he married, was in my grandfather's chorus line. And Louis Armstrong would come around and bring chocolate chip cookies to her backstage at the Apollo before they got together and got married. I know that. And Cab Calloway was in his shows, Ethel Waters, anybody that was anybody. what's the lady that has the restaurant downtown? The brother has the restaurant?
Not B. Smith.
No, Josephine Baker.
Oh, Shay's Josephine.
Yeah, Shay Josephine. And Josephine Baker was in his show called Tan Town Topics.
Yes.
From that show, she was discovered to go to France through my research.
You see?
And so after I did all this research, I wanted to corroborate everything. So I went to various theater organizations, relatives, I got letters, and I have all of that set up just to, you know, I showed them my information and my historical, I contacted the Theater Museum of London, I contacted the royal family, I got letters, you know, and all of the theater people that were familiar with this information. And in the 30s, my grandfather helped Oscar Michaud direct the first all-colored talkie. And they did it in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and it was called The Exile. And while they were making The Exile, they made a short filler film, and it was called The Darktown Review. And The Darktown Review was a type of highbrow, but he had to mix in the lowbrow colored entertainment, where we would have the minstrel people sort of making fun of each other, but Oscar Michaud would cut to the operatic type singing, and they made that filler. The prints of The Exile are not that good, but it shows a little bit of the dancing that my grandfather had. And he had the women dressed with feathers, but you could see the soul. See, the main thing was it was soul, and it was in unison, and he was very strict.
Go from here.
With Arlen Queen come in this morning. Let's go down to the levee and see what she brought in.
Yeah, you can go down to the levee if you want to. I was down there yesterday morning and got insulted.
Who insulted you?
When that boat pulled in, out of all of them folks standing around on the levee, the man had to come off the boat and walk up and insult me.
How they insult?
Ask me that I want to work.
Now, Blondie, that's one thing you sure is got to do is work.
I ain't got to do nothing but stay dark and die.
Well, if you don't get a job so you can eat more often, you're going to die all right, and you're going to die from starvation.
Well, I might die hungry, but I'll never die.
What's he doing here?